Commission meeting in Huron, South Dakota, August 31st. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Smith?
Here.
Booth?
Here.
Wright?
Here.
Robish?
Present.
Mayor Harrington?
Here. We have some guests here tonight. I'm going to take my mask off just because I can't speak and it fogs me up so bad. We have some guests here tonight that are going to enroll our city in a Purple Heart of the city. It makes us a city, Purple Heart City. And I have a proclamation I'm going to read, and I'm going to ask the gentlemen who are here. One is Jake Sather from Huron, and Ken Tennyson from Sioux Falls, and Buck Underwood from Laverne, Minnesota. So I'm going to ask them to come up to the front and join me as I read this proclamation. And a little bit about this before I read this proclamation too. This is a nationwide project, and I'm going to have them show the signs. These signs are going to be put up at each entrance of our city, and they're going to be put up by our highway department, our state highway department. So we don't have to do anything to do it for the city. We'll put 4 of them up. These here will be put up by our American Legion at where they want them put up. As we have 4 of those, put up 2 of these and 2 of those at different parts of our city. So in front of parking spots and stuff, so that we can honor our Purple Heart people as a way of doing it. I will read this proclamation now. This is the first proclamation I've had to read, so bear with me. Proclamation of Purple Heart City. Whereas the city of Huron has great admiration and utmost gratitude for all the men and women who have selflessly served their country and this community as in armed forces, and whereas veterans have paid high price of freedom by leaving their families and communities and place themselves in harm's way for the good of all. And whereas the contributions and the sacrifices of men and women from the Huron area who served in armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and the way of life enjoyed by our citizens. Whereas the Purple Heart is the oldest military decoration in present use and initially created the badge of military merit by General George Washington in 1782. And whereas the Purple Heart was the first American Service Award or decoration made available to the common soldier and especially awarded to members of the United States Armed Forces who have been wounded or paid the ultimate sacrifice in combat with the declared enemy of the United States of America. Whereas the mission of the Military Order of the Purple Heart is to foster an environment of goodwill among the combat wounded veterans, members, and their families, promote patriotism, support legislature initiatives, and most importantly, make sure we never forget. And whereas the city of Huron has largely highly decorated veteran population, including Purple Heart recipients, and whereas that Huron appreciates the sacrifices our Purple Heart recipients make in defending our freedoms, and believe it is important that we acknowledge for their courage and to show them the honor and support that they have earned. Now and therefore, it is resolved that I, Gary Harrington, Mayor of the City of Huron, South Dakota, do hereby claim the city as a Purple Heart City and encourage the citizens of the City of Huron to show their appreciation for the sacrifices the Purple Heart recipients have made in defending our freedoms, to acknowledge their courage and to show them honor and support they have earned. So with that,
voluntary order of the Purple Heart organization. We do the Purple Heart city, county, businesses, reservations. That's part of the Purple Heart Trail that goes the length from George Washington's Monticello to the west coast. In this state, I-90 is the Purple Heart Memorial Highway. And we have 55 cities that are Purple Heart cities, 5 counties that are Purple Heart County. Beetle County has put in their proclamation. And 4 reservations are Purple Heart reservations, along with 5 businesses that are Purple Heart businesses in the state of South Dakota. And I greatly appreciate the city of Huron becoming a Purple Heart city. That will be registered on the Purple Heart Trail at purpleheart.org. And you can see there what cities and towns and counties that are Purple Heart entities.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Very good. Take your mask off, you have a picture taken. You're also good looking when you have your mask off. See, they aren't bad looking on this side.
That's doubtful.
Come on. Wait a minute. We get rid of that thing, so. There you go. Okay.
Thanks, thanks, guys.
Mr. Mayor,
Appreciate it.
thank you for the opportunity to come here and present this, sir.
Safe trip.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Back there, Laverne, take care of yourself.
Oh, yeah. You bet.
Thank you, Mayor.
Be in touch.
Yep, and I just want to say, if any of the businesses here in town have some parking spots, if they wish to have these displayed in their parking lots, let the mayor know, they'll get a hold of myself, and we got 2 weeks to put up around town.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you, guys.
thank you.
You bet.
Say, you want this? Ken, you want
Yeah, what that?
Okay, thank you.
that?
We'll see you Thursday, sir.
Yes, sir. We'll be there.
Yeah, he said he's gonna do a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
That's- All right.
There you go.
I always put my eyes on it. All right. Now to our business here. That's a neat honor, and what's really interesting about that we don't have any expense in it. We don't have to do anything for it. They just come and do it. So it's a great honor for our city to have that, and we look forward to them being up, and we'll enjoy looking at them. So to move on, we go with public forum. Public comments may be sent to us during the live meeting broadcast on our YouTube channel. This link is listed on city website at www.hursd.com/citygovernment. In order to use the YouTube chat feature, please create an account with YouTube and Gmail, or use your existing accounts. Please state your name and address for the record. Public forum is limited to 3 minutes per person. And Janice is on the phone back there. If anybody calls in, has a question for me or anybody on the commission, she'll let me know, and we'll get your answer to you as soon as we can. So with that, is there anybody here that wants to speak to public forum tonight? If not, we'll move on. We're going to move on to agenda approval. So everybody had an opportunity to read the agenda, and was there a motion to consider the approval?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Commissioner Smith makes a motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Robish. Need a vote, please?
Smith.
Aye.
Clute.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Robish.
Aye.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye. Consent agenda. Consent agenda matters appearing on the consent agenda are expected to be non-controversial and will be acted by commission at one time without discussion unless a member of the commission requests an opportunity to address any given item. Items removed from the consent agenda will be discussed at the beginning of the formal items. 5.1, minutes of the August 24th, 2020 meeting. 5.2, fuel quotes by city departments. 5.3, raffle filed by the Huron Get Fit Committee. 5.4, alcoholic beverage consumption in public. Rachel Hunt for a family gathering on September 21st, 2020 at Prospect Park Shelter, picnic shelter. 5.5, personal items. Step increases for Danger Davis, Clay Min, and Zach Weber, who have qualified as special response team members effective 8/30/20. Resignation of Nick Schley as volunteer fireman effective 8/1/20. 5.6, payment of the bills. Consider a motion for the consent agenda.
Move to approve consent.
Commissioner Smith, motion for consent. Need a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bragg. Any discussion on any of these? If not, roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Clute.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Robish. Mayor Harrington.
Aye. Bid quote items. 6.1, consider payment request by Midland Contracting Incorporated for bid number 2020-11 Southtown Residential Development Street and Utility Improvements for $208,286.69. I see our engineer Brett is here. Brett, you have some comments on this one?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This will conclude the installation of utilities for Southtown, and then it also includes the gravel base course. So they brought that up to grade, and now the next step in the construction on Southtown is the curb and gutter installation. And then in the beginning of October, when asphalt paving is back in town, we look to pave that area down there and complete the project. So we're about 52% complete with this project, and it's moving along per schedule, so we expect to be finished by the end of the year on schedule. So we recommend payment of this pay request.
Motion to approve.
Move to approve the contract payment request.
Commissioner Smith, we have a motion, we have a second to the motion? Second, Commissioner Robish. Any discussion on this topic? No doubt. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Clute.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Robish.
Aye.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye. We go to 6.2, consider payment request number 4 and Midland Contracting Incorporated for bid number 2018-12, 3rd Street Southwest Park to Union for $12,429. Engineer Brett, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to bring back memory of this particular project, this is the project that went out for bid last year, and we were hoping to finish it, but the subgrade was unstable with the high water table last year, so we waited to this year to finish it, let that settle down and pack in, that subgrade. This pay request is just for the culvert installation. There was some 42-inch culverts that they had to adjust and install there. That completes that. We're basically done with this until asphalt paving is back in town, and beginning of October to also pave this segment, and plans to have this completed by the end of the year. So we're around 40-50% complete with this project, but the majority of the project will be the paving when they come back in October, and they'll pave it in a week or two, so it won't take long. But we recommend payment of this pay request.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the payment request.
Commissioner Smith makes the first motion. Second motion, please.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Robish. Any discussion on this topic?
It did pack in then?
It is. It's solid. If you drive out there, you can feel like last year when you drove over it, it felt like you were driving you're in water almost. It felt just squishy, as you crossed it, and it stabilized and firmed up. The water table lowered, and I think we'll have a good system now. We did actually put in fabric underneath that base course, under the base. That'll also help hold that stable as time goes on, so.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Hood.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Robish.
Aye.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye. Moving on, 6.3, consider purchase of 2 trailer-mounted message boards for the traffic department with CARES funds in an amount of $19,122 each. Brett, you want to speak on that? I know what happened.
Yeah, last week, Thursday night, I believe it was, when the windstorm came through town, it grabbed our existing message board and gave it a little bit of a toss and messed it up pretty good. That message board was out, giving direction to where the COVID testing is out on the West Industrial Park there, kind of by Lankota in the spec building. And since it got destroyed for the use of COVID and we need to basically direct traffic to COVID testing moving forward, we were looking to add to go out and purchase 2 new message boards for that purpose. So the total would be $38,244, and we're looking to purchase this with CARES money. To verify I have the right time frame, we are planning mass COVID testing later on this year, I believe. So we would like to have those message boards hopefully in place by then, but it'll be tight deadline because they're gonna take 4 weeks or so to get, so we might have to rent one in the meantime, but we'll get it figured out to have some message boards there to direct traffic.
Any discussion on this?
Did insurance cover that message board damage?
They are not covered by insurance, no.
No?
Any other discussion? Yes.
So just to clarify, so when we say we're using CARES money, this is tied into the other stuff, or this is money we already have?
No, this is tied into the $3 million we received. We did email the state to ask if it qualifies for funding, and it does. So we got that permission from them and we brought it to the commission as requested prior.
Okay, but this is when we believe will be eligible and will come.
Yeah,
up.
we've talked to the state, we went through our NECOG and they have already approved it. We've ordered them, the bill's here, and, yeah. Good one.
Commissioner Robish.
Thank you, Mayor. This is not directly involved with this, but this is message and its speed and whatever. I understand that, but what I want to say is on 21st Street, I want to do this on public. That's why I'm doing it now with this, okay? On 21st Street, we put up flashing lights for the school zone going by Holy Trinity School. And school's been going for a whole week already in a day. And I go that street every morning during that time, and the first 3 or 4 days, it worked very well. This morning it didn't work quite so well, but it's working, but I just want to remind the public, when those lights are flashing, please go with them. Okay, there's a lot of children there, and I know it's a high traffic, I know it's a main thoroughfare, but it's something we need to do. So it's not got anything to do with this message board, but it's part of the deal, so. Thank you.
Good reminder, good reminder.
Mayor, I just have one.
Yes,
one other
Commissioner Smith.
question. I understand that this is to replace the 2 that we had. We had one in request in capital asset. Is that a different style or something?
They're the same, we only had one, and that got wrecked essentially in the storm. There may be some salvage value to it, we've got to look through it some, but the one that's in request for capital assets, we postponed to 2022.
Right.
So with this, we would no longer need to include that in the 2022 budget. At this time, we would not plan to include that. We would in the future budget.
Okay,
This kind of-
2022, like it's not
Yeah.
next year.
We did, there was in the budget initially,
But we pulled it.
second budget, but we had pulled it already.
Right, I understand that. You're looking for 2, one to replace the damaged one, and then an additional one, is that what you're saying?
Since the CARES money is available and it'll have a practical use to be able to direct traffic to the mass testing and try to keep that's the intent. I believe it'll help, and then I guess the fruit of that will be that we'll have them afterwards for anything else that we'll need.
Yeah.
Maybe additional COVID testing or issues down the road, but.
Okay. I didn't know if there are different styles or what, so.
No, we're looking to do the same. Just a side note, we did talk to Traffic Solutions, who's a contractor across the state that puts up these message boards all over on construction projects, and discussed with them if there's something we can do different in the future to prevent this from happening with a windstorm like we had. And they said that in some cases, they'll lay sandbags on them to help weight them down a little bit, but they said you anchor them down too much and it just starts ripping other parts off and wrecking other pieces. So they've got some legs and braces that go out, but they're really, usually that's not a problem unless you get the kind of windstorm that we had come through on Wednesday, and it happened to just catch it right.
So their answer is they prefer to have a flying saucer out there rather than have it tore up.
Yep. That's essentially what they gave us, yeah.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote,
We
please.
need a motion.
I know we have.
I'd move to authorize, where are we at? Purchase the 2 trailer-mounted message boards and authorize to provide for the funding of that through the CARES funds.
Commissioner Smith, thank you. Second on that?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Robish. Now we can have roll call vote.
Smith.
Aye.
Clute.
Aye.
Robish.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye.
And
Thank you.
Liz Phillips.
Yes. Thank you, Brett, appreciate it. Petitions and communications, consider quitclaim deed with Greater Huron Development Corporation on lot transfer, lot 7, Broadland Creek Residential. Tucker Verleski, our city attorney, would you speak on that?
Thank you, Mayor. So, yes, that's essentially correct. This is just a quitclaim deed transferring Lot 7, Broadland Creek residential subdivision from the city of Huron to the Greater Huron Development Corporation.
And do you have a motion to approve this?
I move to approve.
Move to approve, Commissioner Gregg.
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Clute. Any discussion?
So this is we transferred and then this lot is sold, is that correct? So they
Correct. The
transferred
city
to
holds
that.
all their land within the city, and then when they sell a lot, we do a quick claim deed back to them.
And then they're in turn then gonna transfer that to the
They'll
new
sell
owner.
it to them. Yep.
Thank you.
And the reason for that is that then
They don't have to pay
taxes
property
don't
taxes.
improve.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Clute.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Robish.
Aye.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye. All right, number 9, department items. Announce the city offices will be closed and the city commission will not meet on September 7th in observation of Labor Day holiday. 9.2, announcement solid waste department holiday schedule.
Thanks, Mayor. The solid waste department rubble site will be closed Saturday, September 5th, and Monday, September 7th, in observance of the Labor Day holiday. Monday's garbage, recycling, and grass collection will be done on Wednesday, September 9th. So please remember to have your containers out the night before that, as the drivers will not be rerouted. If you have any questions, you can call 353-8542.
Well said, Commissioner Clute, well said.
I'm getting pretty good at that, wouldn't you say, Mayor?
You are getting really good at it.
Almost as impressive as the Purple Heart Proclamation.
Yeah.
That's right.
9.3, consider accepting recommendation of water and sewer rates and review industrial water and sewer information based on rates. Cedric, and I see we have Tanya here tonight.
Good evening, how are you guys?
Good, welcome back.
Good. Nice to see you again, nice to meet you. Commissioner break. I'm gonna take this off just so I'm a little easier to understand when I'm presenting.
I think that'll help.
I think it will too. I know last time that was a little bit of a challenge. But, so what I'm gonna go over is this handout that you received in your council packets. The idea here is that as part of implementing the recommendations from the water and sewer rate study that was recently completed, and I don't know if it's easier if those PowerPoints can be pulled up so people can see them in the background and follow along. Otherwise, if not, no problem at all. PDF.
Which one?
Oh. There we go. That wasn't so bad. Thank you, Brett. And so we want to go through this information. This will be a good refresher for those of you who heard the rate study presentation several months ago, and kind of a good crash course for those of you who it's all new to. So, so this handout was prepared because really when it comes to implementing rates and having people understand the need for rate adjustments or increases, understanding is key. And so something that can be put on the city website or handed out, as a nice 2-page flyer, I think will go a long ways to educating the public. So I just want to go through the components of this with each of you. And the first part is kind of, the overall purpose of the study and the reason that it was done in the upper left right there. And so what we wanted to do is look at what are the operating expenses that the water and the sewer departments are seeing, and are the rates generating enough funds to cover those costs? So that's kind of the main components. But the other thing is all cities need to do capital improvements. And so for the planned capital improvements from 20 to 25, are the rates high enough to fund those capital improvements? Also, what demands are being placed on the system, and that comes back to are the rates fair? So depending on what each customer class, what demand they're placing on the system as far as peak day water needs or steady usage throughout the day, or as far as wastewater, more of the loads on the system, are those demands that they're placing, are they recovering the cost from each of those user groups with the rates to generate the revenue needed? And then lastly, when we look at industrial customers, one thing that's critical is the high-strength customers are charged surcharges when their wastewater exceeds the strength of typical normal wastewater. And so are those surcharge rates high enough to cover the cost of actually providing the treatment for each of those components? So those were the drivers and why this rate study was done. And I'm going to focus on the water rate study first. What that kind of found was the need for rate increases was due to increased operating expenses. Part of that's just due to normal inflation. Every year rates go up, and so every year as rates go up, part of that is intended to cover those inflationary costs. The other thing is the cost of purchasing treated drinking water from the city or from Mid-Dakota. They're increasing the rates that they're charging the city. And so those rates, as they go up, the city's got to be able to keep up with them. And so that's a large driver. And then the third reason is the capital improvement needs. Idea I related it to in the handout there was just like a car, you've got to take care of it, you got to change the oil, you got to change the tires, rotate them periodically, and do all your other maintenance needs. If you don't do the same thing with your drinking water system, it's going to fall apart, and it's going to take twice as much to fix it. So you've got to keep up with that. So we prepared a couple of handouts that break this out. You've got it in the upper right-hand side of the handout. It's also over there on the screen. And this shows all the water department expenses and what areas they go to. Quite a large part of it is purchasing water from Mid-Dakota. And so you can see obviously when they increase their costs, how much it impacts the need for additional rate increases onto the residents. Another large area of improvement or area of expenses is capital improvements. And that's because there are, each project that rehabilitates or repairs part of the system is a significant cost. And then as typical with any other business, salaries and wages make up a significant portion. Labor costs require a lot. Typically, labor increases are provided to employees every year, and so that cost also has to be passed on to the customer. So I think that'll give users and customers in the city of Huron a good idea of where things are where money's being spent. Then the next thing we've got down here in the lower portion is the water department capital improvements. And it shows a breakout of where those capital improvements, where they're going. And for the most part, 88% of them are going into the underground piping, into the water main replacement, and just keeping up on repairing and replacing those old lines. The other large portion is a SCADA upgrade, and SCADA sounds like a weird acronym if you don't know what that is. That goes to basically the control system to allow the water plant to communicate with the wells, to communicate with tower levels, things like that. And then water tower demolition is another item that'll occur the next 5 years. There's an older tower in town that needs to be taken down. So, go on to the next slide. Some of the rate study findings were, I've mentioned a couple of these, and that's summarized right here, right below the rates. And that was to increase the rates for inflationary costs, revenue requirements and things like that. But the other thing, the second bullet item that I want to point out is that it states that one of the findings were that the monthly customer charge for the meter sizes 5/8 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1 inch, those customers with those size meters, they weren't paying enough on that monthly customer charge to cover the cost of providing their service. So the study recommended that those monthly customer charges increase, and that impacts most of your residential customers. So they'll see a little bit more of an increase. It also showed that the customers with the larger meter sizes, 1.5 or greater, were actually paying too much, and that their monthly customer charge should decrease. And so those were the recommendations of the study. And then finally, the last one was the rural rates. The rural customers are currently charged about 3.95 to 4.0 times the residential rate, or times the in-city rate. And that's actually too high. It's not costing that much to service them. And to be more consistent, it was recommended that they be charged 30% more times, so essentially 1.3 times in-city customers. That recovers the cost of providing their service and matches up with what was occurring with sewer rates, so it's a little easier to understand. So all of these findings come together into the proposed water rates, which are shown there for years, recommended water rates for years 2021 to 2025. It's broken out first with the usage rate, so the rate per 1,000 gallons that every customer would pay, and then over on to the right, it would be the monthly customer charge depending on which meter size each customer has. The other thing, we've got a little note down in the bottom that the annual rate increase would be approximately 2.3 to 2.9%, would be what most customers would see on average over those 5 years. And then lastly, because I think everybody wants to compare themselves, to other towns or what's it like in other communities, we've got 2 graphs on the bottom that show what the water rates would be for some of the area cities that are similar in size to you, so like Mitchell or Vermillion or Pierre. And so you can see that for the residential customer, a typical customer using 5,000 gallons a month, Huron is currently right in the middle of the pack with all those communities, and with the proposed rates, it's a slight increase moving up to that column in green, still kind of in the middle of the pack. And then the other comparison we included in the handout was for a typical commercial customer, which would use around 15,000 gallons per month. And they're just a little bit on the higher side of the middle of the pack, but still you can see the rate increase that's proposed, and the rate increase recommended for 2021 actually decreases their rate. They go from the orange is the current, it goes down to 50, and that's because those customers have that 1.5 meter, and that monthly meter charge would go down, and so they would actually see a slight decrease. So that kind of summarizes the water side of the handout. Then if you flip to...
Can I just to be clear?
Yep.
That graph is implementing the new rate.
The 2021 rate, yes.
So we implemented that, then you can see the comparison with the,
Yep.
so even with the increases, we're right there in the middle, really.
Yep.
Okay.
And hopefully that provides customers, when they see this, at least some reassurance, like you're not
Right.
jumping
It
rates.
didn't seem real super clear to me that that's what you were trying to show.
Okay. If there's a way, if you see anything and you have an idea of how it could be conveyed better, I would be very open to that.
Well, say that, I mean, say that we're implementing these new rates, and this is how the new rates will compare to other towns.
Okay.
Something, obvious about that.
Gotcha.
Because I didn't know if it was the old rate.
Well, and the text, we packed a lot into the sheet,
Yeah.
and that's where the font is kind of tiny. On a web post, I think it'll show up better, because it'll look bigger most of the time, where you can zoom in on
Sure,
it.
sure.
On a handout, it is tiny.
Yeah.
And that's where if you wanted to revise it at all to put it on more pages, we could do that.
Sure.
So,
On the handout, it actually does say between the two charts, it says water rate comparison with area communities. So it does say that it's a comparison.
Yeah, okay.
And I think it helps in the colors too. You can see
It does help, yeah.
But maybe,
I can see that.
but maybe that point of just specifically calling out the font, even if you don't want the whole font out, just to Doug's point, if the current 2020 and the 2021 were larger, because those are the ones, people don't really need Yankton, whatever, that's fine, they can look close, but the ones they're
Yeah.
really gonna care about are the Huron ones, so maybe if just those two were a little bit more bold,
Yeah.
maybe that would help.
bold or larger, that's easy to do.
That's a good suggestion.
All right. The one thing I want to point out on here, because it relates both to water and sewer, is on the bottom of the second page, so on the bottom of the sewer side, we did have our frequently asked questions section. And I like to include this because I try to anticipate the things that residents are going to think of or what they might want to know and address those questions ahead of time. So one was, when were water and sewer rates last raised? Well, it was just last January, like the city does the past several years. So it kind of reassures people that you're not trying to spring anything on them. This is something the city's been doing regularly. And they're just wanting to have a study done at this point to make sure that they're adjusting things the way that should be done. The other thing is to find out, when is the city implementing the new rates? And after talking with city staff, it was the inclination, and the city could choose to do whatever you want to do, but the idea was that you would be increasing rates again in January, as was done in previous years. So that's what it states right now, but that could be changed. The other is an explanation of what the monthly customer charge is. Because I think people sometimes wonder, well, I'm paying for 1,000 gallons, so why do I have to pay this monthly customer charge? What is it covering? And so it's an explanation that it's costs directly associated with serving customers, such as preparing the monthly billing or, getting the meter reading. Just general accounting expenses, and then maintenance and capital repairs related to their services. So it's an additional kind of, it's a cost that occurs no matter whether they turn the faucet on or not, that you have to take care of every month. And then the last question is I think when people see this, for those that want to try to reduce their bill or do something, we provided a question on there, how can I reduce my water and sewer bill? And one suggestion would be to try to reduce usage. And so we put several suggestions on here. One, obviously fixing leaks. If you can go to any low flow appliances, such as low flow showers or low flow washers, low flow toilets. The other thing is just the idea to use a rain barrel outside for watering. You can capture that rainwater and use that for irrigation. That helps. And then we also provided a couple website links on the bottom there in the orange. If they want to go and get further ideas, there's some great sites. One's the EPA site, and another one is called Water Use It Wisely, with just additional ideas and things you can do to try to conserve water. So it's kind of a good public message to send out too. All right, so then breaking down the sewer side of the handout, if you go to the top left right there, the need for sewer rate increases, similar to the water side, it's the increased operating expenses, and that's just due to increasing costs every year and inflation. The other one, item 2, is the treatment facility expansion. And obviously for the sewer side, that is a significant investment the next couple of years and a significant expense. And so that is the greatest reason that the rates are increasing more than on the water side, is because of that large capital expenditure. So we tried to include reasons in there to help the public understand why that's necessary. It's because of the growth that's occurring in the community, the more restricted discharge permit that's coming down from the DENR, and what types of equipment need to be provided. The other thing that's mentioned in there is that there's actually 2 phases of the project, and the second phase was delayed to try to spread out the costs and spread out the need for rate increases over additional years. And trying to convey that message to the public that the city is trying to be reasonable in how, capital projects occur, and trying to, be fiscally responsible and considering the impacts to ratepayers. And then the third one is capital improvement needs. This is again more like ongoing maintenance, that car analogy in maintenance I brought up before. So just maintaining the existing collection system and the existing equipment. So we've got another graph, as in last time with the sewer department expenses, that shows the various areas where expenses occur. The largest one, similar to water, is in capital expenditures. And I'll have a further breakout of that in a second. But the other area is with utilities and salaries and wages. There is a transfer out shown for the Public Works building, and that was just that 1 year kind of situation that's not an ongoing thing that will keep happening, but in the year the study was done and the year the data was looked at, that occurred. Utilities are also a significant expense on the wastewater side. There's a lot of energy that goes into treating wastewater as far as pumping it out to the treatment ponds, also adding the air that goes into the sequencing batch reactors that provides the oxygen for the bacteria to break down the wastewater. Then if we go on to kind of the breaking out, and go on to the next slide, the sewer department capital expenditures. This hopefully, and this is this on the middle left, this will provide the public with a good idea of what kind of capital expenditures is the sewer department doing. A lot of it is for debt repayment for existing improvements that have been done, but the other large portion is for the collection system lining that has occurred. That's that cured in place pipelining, some of the manhole rehabilitation, and the lift station rehabilitation. And then there's also been things like putting the new covers on the anaerobic lagoons, the SCADA improvements or the communications between the plants and the lift stations, that's also needed. And then as well as just sewer replacement. So hope this should communicate that well to the public. So the main kind of 2 parameters that the sewer rate study found was, first, the sewer rates need to increase to fund the planned capital improvements and expansion of the plant, and that the surcharges for high-strength wastewater also need to increase. And so the sewer rates are shown over here on the middle right. And we've got a little call out saying that, here rates are going to decrease about 7.0 to 7.8% a year. The rate per 1,000 gallons is shown, as well as the monthly customer charge. The little bullet below that indicates the rural customers will pay 30% more. And then we also did a comparison here for the sewer rates at a usage level of 5,000 gallons, which is a typical residential usage, and compared that to area communities. The current is shown in orange, and you can see the rates do increase slightly, about $2 per month, with the green recommended 2021 rates. If you look at the next slide, this shows a commercial customer at 15,000 gallons of usage a month. And here again, you can see kind of a similar shift where the current rates are in orange, and the proposed rates will increase about almost $6 a month. So showing the impact to customers. And this is something too, we can certainly bold those lines on the bottom for Huron to have those stand out a little bit more. And then the other thing that's in the works, and this is where this you may want to actually try to look on the screen. So we don't have a handout prepared. We're in the process of finalizing a handout for the industrial customers. That something that the city meets with some of the industries and explains some of the rate changes. This handout could be brought with to help kind of convey the message or be left as a leave behind so that they can refer back to it as they're trying to determine the impact to their business on the rate increases. And so the industrial rate handout will be similar in format to this, but it'll focus really on the changes that directly impact those industries. And the one thing I want to point out, if we go to the next slide, what the city ordinance reads is that any industrial strength waste that discharges a concentration of greater than 250 for BOD, 250 for TSS, 25 for ammonia, or 100 for fog, which means fats, oils, and grease. Any of those should pay a high-strength surcharge. And so, right now, the way the ordinance states is that, whenever a high-strength entity is over that, they should pay that. Right now, what's going on is they're only paying that on the day the testing occurs. So let's say that testing is done and they go over on a Tuesday and a Thursday. Well, they only pay the fee on Tuesday and Thursday. But if they violated on Tuesday and Thursday, likely Wednesday they probably violated it too. And so that's one of the recommendations. And so if you go to the next slide, and jump it down a little bit, one of the recommendations that comes out of that is that when the testing is done for some of the high-strength industries, that those test results should be averaged over a period. And that just needs to be set up in your ordinances. It could be, 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, however much you want to set the average, so that they're paying, whatever that average was over that period. They're paying the surcharge each day.
Tanya,
Mhm.
I can stop her right there.
Mhm.
So I don't know if this is a question for you or Rob, but who does that testing, we or they? Who takes their samples, we or they?
Both.
Okay.
We sample them, they sample their own, and they send theirs to a lab, and we send some of ours to a lab too, just to have more information.
So there's something new there anyway. So.
And I get their results and they get our results
Okay.
from the labs. And
That's fine, go ahead.
So the recommendations that would impact the industry that would show up on that industry handout that we're preparing is, because most of them have larger meters, we want to point out that on the water side, the monthly customer service charge for larger meters greater than 1.5 inch, those would actually decrease. And then the other thing we want to point out is there is right now a reduced water usage rate for the large industries. And that charge is reasonable because those large industries that are on that reduced water rates, they have a very steady usage throughout the year. And so in a sense, they're the perfect customer that way because they're putting a constant demand on the system, and you're always, based on their historical usage, you're assured that they're going to continue to be using that much water. You'll be able to generate that much revenue from them every month. Unlike a typical residential user like myself and probably some of you, in the winter we don't use a lot, but in the summer when we're watering the lawns more or watering the flowers or just outside doing things, we use a lot more water in the summer. So we're a customer that the city can only capture that revenue from in the summer, but the system's got to be overbuilt for us. These particular industrial customers are not like that. They're steady users, so they justify a lower rate. The other thing is there's a couple customers that convey wastewater directly to the wastewater plant, so they don't use the collection system at all. And so because of that, they should be eligible for a reduced rate because they're not using the collection system, and so essentially they would need to pay for it if this reduced rate is offered. The other thing is there's an industry that pays a flat rate now, and so they just pay a set fee every month. And so that set fee is not covering the cost of providing their service if you look at the per 1,000 gallons they're discharging. So their rate should be changed where instead of a flat fee, they pay based on how much they're discharging to the sewer system in per 1,000 gallons. And then a couple last things which relates to the surcharges. The BOD and TSS surcharges have not been increased in a number of years. They're very low and they are not recovering the cost of providing the treatment. So those should increase. And then the surcharge fees, we talked about how they would need to be averaged out over the number of tests. We just mentioned that. And then the last thing is, right now the city has to provide an industrial pretreatment program where there's essentially a staff person at the city that assists with all the paperwork required in monitoring these higher strength users and providing reporting to the state and documenting and completing the paperwork. And so it does require a staff person to complete that. And because of the cost the city incurs for the program, it's recommended that those high-strength industrial customers fund part of that program. And so the rate study, we looked at having them fund 50% of that program, which would require them to pay a $454.98 fee per month to fund half the program, and then the city would fund the other half. So looking at these impacts to the industries, if you go to the next slide, on the water side, with the recommendations, the Huron current rate is shown in orange. The rate for 2021 is shown in green. And so this is on the water side, what the impact would be to a large industrial customer using about a little over 22 million gallons a month. So a very large industrial customer. And you can see that Huron's very competitive with communities in the area on the water side. If we look at that same user, a very large industrial customer discharging to the sewer system, and this is one of the customers that discharges directly to the wastewater plant, so they receive that discounted rate. You can see the rates that they're currently paying in orange are much lower than the rates of area communities, and even with the recommendations, the rate in 2021 will still be much lower compared to area communities. And so the hope here is to provide the industry with some reassurance that while the rate increases seem high, they still have a very competitive, very, very beneficial rate here in Huron. The next thing I want to go over is the surcharge rates. And so right now, the rate for a BOD, for a surcharge rate, is only 4 cents per 1,000 gallons. That is very low. We are recommending it get up closer to near 40 cents per thousand, or pardon me, for not per 1,000 gallons. It's 40 cents for every pound of BOD that exceeds that 250 milligram per liter threshold. And so same with TSS. TSS is currently at 4 cents per pound, and that needs to increase as well, up, actually in this sense, above that 40-cent limit, up to be 40.436 cents per pound over 250 milligrams per liter for 2021, and then would increase additionally in future years. And the large driver in those, a lot of the equipment that is going to be installed as part of the phase 1 improvements goes to removing TSS and BOD. And so part of it is the rate was so low for those two items before, and it needed to increase, and then the capital improvements are needed largely for those two items. So those additional costs, we need to recover the cost of providing the treatment. And that's where it is currently at. For the ammonia and the fog, those levels are very similar right now to area communities. They're also recovering the cost of providing the treatment. And so no change is recommended to the ammonia or the fog surcharges for the next 5 years. And just to get a feel kind of where that's at, if we go to the next comparison graph, so this is for BOD, so and how that per pound charge compares. And so right now Huron's at 4 cents. And you can see it would move to 0.387 cents with the proposed 2021 surcharge. It would be about in the middle of the pack with the proposed surcharge. And currently, for example, Pierce, kind of the next closest one on the list on the far left next to Huron, Pierce doesn't even have any high-strength wastewater customers. And so when we got this rate, they gave it to us, but they admitted that we haven't looked at that rate for years because we haven't had to use it. So that should explain how, the number of rates up in that 35 to 45 cents, those are the ones that likely have industrial high-strength customers that have been implementing it and trying to recover the costs. If you go to the next slide, so again, current charge in orange of 4 cents for every pound of TSS over 250 is very, very low. Pure is close, but has no high-strength industrial customers. The proposed 2021 rate for TSS does move quite a ways over to the right. But again, a large part of that is because most of the improvements occurring are in preliminary treatment, where a great portion of TSS is removed, and then also in the sequencing batch reactors, where most of the rest of it's removed. So it's because of the improvements focused on the removal of those parameters. And then the last two comparisons, one is for ammonia. And so not as many communities actually have an ammonia surcharge because they don't have the high strength, the dischargers that discharge significant ammonia. So just of those communities we surveyed, only Watertown and Aberdeen have an ammonia limit. So they're higher than Huron's. So, and then if you go to the next slide, for fog, which is fats, oils, and grease, again, Sioux Falls, Watertown didn't have that, but Aberdeen and Sioux Falls have a flag surcharge, and Huron's current in 2021 surcharge rate would be the same as the city of Sioux Falls, so should provide some assurance that it's reasonable. So that's all the information both to the, I went through the handout, that was the information to convey to more the general public. And then this last bit of information would go on a handout that could be used with meeting or communicating with the industries. But the next steps would then, I believe tonight the city is requesting approval of the recommended rates. And so that would be one of the next steps. After that is done, then I think the city would try to move forward with modifying portions of the ordinance that relate to the rates that would need to be updated, as well as changing the current ordinance process to change the rates so that rates could be approved via resolution. That is something that most communities in South Dakota have moved to. By using a resolution, it's a much easier process to make those annual rate adjustments, especially when you're making them every year and they're usually small.
So our rates are done by resolution, it's our surcharge rates and those other things that are not.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So we have to correct our ordinances in that case.
Okay. And then the other thing would be meeting with some of those large industrial customers, kind of sitting down and going through with them, explaining the changes to the rates, explaining why it's necessary, making sure they have the information they have, encouraging that if they have concerns to look at some additional pretreatment options to try to bring some of those BOD, TSS, ammonia, fog concentrations, bring those down so that they can save money and not have to pay those surcharges. And then it would also be providing or conveying this information to the public through the city's website or as a handout they could pick up in City Hall. So hopefully that was a good recap or additional information for those for Commissioner Bray that weren't here.
And I would like to add, we had discussed, so as far as the residential side of things and the commercial side of things for water and sewer rates, it's fairly straightforward, and the increases that are proposed in the rate study, recommended by the rate study, are really not that different from what we were already doing. The sewer rates are a little higher than what we've been doing, but that's to be expected with the improvements that we're looking at right now. On the industrial side, there's a bit more impact, if you will, to some of our industries in town. And just, straightforward with that, they're gonna increase, like actually on water, some of them, it's very similar to what they've seen year by year. So there won't be much change on the water rate side. On the sewer rate side, there'll be an increase to their rates, but there's a few industries where the rates will actually go down. But it's when you factor in their surcharges that they're hitting us with, that's going to be the biggest impact to them. But that's why we want to meet with these industries and discuss the options with them. We know that they have pretreatment and that they can remove more of this BOD and TSS on their side, and thereby significantly reduce the surcharges that they'd be subject to. So they have the ability to do that. It's a lot cheaper for them to treat it on their side than it is for the city to design a system and build it to treat it on our side. So, but just to be straight, that's something that we as a city will need to do and meet with these industries and discuss this through with them.
Are you and Rob gonna be contacting them and seeing if they want to meet or suggest that we'd like to meet with them, or?
Yes, after we would receive approval tonight, the next step would be to set these meetings up very quickly. Because rates we don't plan to implement until 2021, beginning of the year. So we want to give them time to start adjusting their pretreatment to see, what they can do and to kind of get it tuned in before the beginning of the year, So that's part of it. But yes, Rob, myself, and Dave Lemke would be meeting with them and having some discussions with various industries that want to meet or that are impacted the most. But the key is, the study was done to determine what the minimum return that we needed to recover our cost. That's what we were looking at with this study, to try to look forward, because as you see with the improvements that are in place now, these types of projects are extremely expensive. And if we don't efficiently conserve and utilize that capacity with this new treatment facility, we'll be looking not very far down the road at expanding it again. And we need to be a little more proactive on that.
So is the anticipation that this study will take us out to the completion of this project in good shape so that we don't have to do any additional studies, any additional rate changes, or do you think they have to be tweaked in a yearly basis? Or?
Yes and no. So what this study looked at was a 5-year period from 2020 to 2025, and it incorporated the costs that are known for the Phase 1 improvements. The Phase 2 project is planned for 2026, and so that study is outside the window of this rate study. And so the idea is that you would update the rate study probably in 3 to 5 years if you're starting to plan for that next phase. But likely on the wastewater side, with the costs that are anticipated for the second phase to replace some equipment that's gonna be wearing out, that you will probably need higher rate increases, upwards in that 5 to 8% again, going out to fund that next phase.
Mr. Mayor, what are we, for action, we'll be accepting the recommendation. Does that then put these actual proposed rates on the books then? I mean, are we actually voting, or are we just?
Nope, that's what we would be doing.
Motion to accept.
Would be voted, so we can implement the rates and talk with the industries.
And start moving forward with ordinance changes
Yeah.
that are necessary.
And when you say that would go into effect, then you said you.
It would be effective for January
January.
2021. And that's what we normally do with our regular rates. That's something that's approved in December normally, and then it's effective for January 1. Our water rates too actually aren't, our rate increases have been probably since 2005 when we did all of our new water treatment plant. We've been taking cost of living increases annually, anywhere from 2.5% to 3% every year since. So we're pretty on track with water. Sewer, we were a little behind, and knowing that all this was coming and to qualify for a grant that we got 2 years ago, we had to be at that $30 for 5,000 gallons by January of last year. So we've taken significant increases the last 2 years. So for 2020, it was over 11%. In the year before, it was over 10%. So an increase of 7% is actually less than we've taken the last few years.
But if you're ready for a motion there, I'll move to accept the recommended rate changes.
Motion. Commissioner Clute with a motion to approve. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Robish. Any discussion? More discussion?
I did have a question on the rural portion. Why do you think we were so far, you talked about going from 4 times to 1.3 times. How do you think we got so far out of whack, and how, the second follow-up to that then would be, for increasing the rates for the in-town, those are staggered over 5 years. When we drop from that 4 times to 1.3 times, will that be immediate, or I'm assuming we're not gonna stagger that down the opposite way? So I don't know how many rural customers we serve, but is that gonna create a cash flow issue there? Because we're staggering the increase for the in-town customers over the years, but we're taking a significant drop on the rural customers immediately.
There are 2 things. It will not negatively impact cash flow. That was one thing the study looked at each year. Probably the number one goal was maintaining adequate cash flow. There are not that many industrial customers, and so the impact of lowering them down, we've made it up in the other areas to balance things out.
In rural.
Rural.
Yeah, I think there's only like
That's okay. So it's a pretty small.
It's a small, very small number. I'm
Okay.
so sorry. Very, very small number. But you know, the other thing related to that too is, I think what happened, and jump in if you guys know any different, but my guess is what happened is that at some point, the rates of rural customers were made higher. And who knows if it was twice or, you know, what number was chosen, but it was made higher. But then when you increase a lower number by 3% and you increase the higher number by 3%, that higher jump keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you get further and further apart. So that's my guess on how it happened. And now it's just time to kind of reset that. And by changing it so that the rates are always 30% higher, you won't have that problem again where it's not going to get so far apart. It'll always be consistent. And the other thing is very normal to charge customers who are outside city limits slightly more than a customer inside city limits because they're not paying the, you know, city taxes and other things that the residents pay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Did a good job.
Good to see you guys again.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Smith is absent. Clute,
Aye.
Bragg,
Aye.
Robish,
Aye.
Mayor Hansel.
Aye.
Mayor? I have one comment for Brett or Tanya, either one. Tanya, you made a little bit of reference on the phase 1, phase 2, whatever. If either one of you wants to tell, because we all know in this room, but not very many people outside know what's going on with phase 1, phase 2, and where are we at?
I'll probably have to defer to you
Yep.
on that.
An update, phase 1 is basically a replacement of pre-treatment equipment. It includes replacement of pre-treatment equipment, which would be like bar screens and grit removal and some meters and different stuff in the pre-treatment building. Phase 2 and phase 1 also includes replacement of the SBRs, which is the sequencing batch reactors. And basically that's where a lot of our biological treatment occurs. And so that is under design right now. We actually have a 60% meeting this week. And we plan to have that bid this fall yet. And that construction can start in the winter, or more than likely we'll go through the shop drawing review process and everything in the winter, and it'll start right away in the spring and kick off. But the plan is to bid it this fall yet, before the end of the year. So that is on schedule at this point yet and working. Phase 2 would consist of replacement, upgrades to the pumps at the pre-treatment building. Right now, the wastewater goes, excuse me? Yeah, the wet wells and the pumping equipment. Right now, the wastewater goes across the James River near 3rd Street there. 3rd Street, and that's a pre-treatment building over there by the solid waste road that curves around for the public that's maybe not aware. But the wastewater then has to be pumped from that location to the east, to the front of our lagoons, our stabilization ponds that are to the east there directly. So those pumps and those wet wells, there needs to be improvement there.
And then also, depending on the effluent permit, if that changes.
Yes, depending on waiting to see what the DENR does for requirements on the effluent permit, but they may require nutrient removal for the city of Huron. And at that point, we would have to include nitrogen and phosphorus removal options, depending on what they put for requirements on the city. At this point, they don't have, we're able to meet the current levels, but it's kind of progressing basically from the nation, from EPA, to become more restrictive on nutrient discharge to our lakes and rivers. And South Dakota is working to put that out to us at some point.
So this total project cost was,
Phase 1 is right around 15 million.
yeah.
Okay,
The
a
total-
little less, it's like 14, well, with design, it's like 14.9, 14. Phase 2 is right around 5, I think.
I think it's more, that's why I said Odell. 'cause I
And
remember-
phase 2 depends on what you include for the nutrient, for the pre-treatment.
Well, that's the reason for the bigger increases in the wastewater is because of this, and people are not seeing that. And that's a good thing that you don't see it.
Right.
And you don't see the wastewater It costs a lot of money.
Mhm.
And, but you don't see the progress. That's why I'm bringing this up. I mean,
And this $15 million project is, and to be able to do that with the rate, the minimal rate increases that we're actually seeing
Right.
is compliments to city staff before I was even here planning for this and getting ready for this work.
well, you can see new water mains going in, you can see new streets going in. This stuff you don't see, and you don't want to see it. So
Right.
that's why, okay, there you go. That's why I bring this up. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tony, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, we did.
All right, up next, we're gonna start talking about our budget. For all you people that